All right, we're back with part 2 of The Lost History of Tennessee Whiskey, the book by Drew Hanisch. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Whiskey Showman Podcast.
All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with me. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but I'm a little bit hoarse this morning. We'll get into that for sure. So we're getting into part 2 of The Lost History of Tennessee Whiskey. Now, I will tell you in part 1, if you haven't listened to it, please do. Please go back and listen to that. And I just released the podcast with Drew Hanisch, talking not only about this book, but everything that they are doing, that he is doing, sorry. And it's just really, really cool. He is a fountain of freaking knowledge. Like, holy crap. The amount of research this guy does is unparalleled. I mean, this is 400-page book that we're, first book club. Let's dive deep, I guess. And it's obviously history. So it's a lot of names and dates and stuff like that. But he presents it in a way to where you can actually get into it. So we're going to talk about that. Have a little bit of housekeeping, just a very tiny little bit of housekeeping before we get into it. Well, let's start with, I've been recently, I've been really trying to create a friendship, I guess you could say, or whiskey friendship, if you want to call it that, with the boys over at the Chill Filtered podcast. Okay. Brian and Cole over there doing some amazing stuff. Please go check them out. But they do a thing and I'm not trying to copy them at all. I don't want you to think I am. They do a thing that one of the ways you can help support. And I'm like, well, that sounds pretty cool. So one of the ways that you guys can help support my show is try going over to my Instagram account and give me a follow over there, because I'm posting all kinds of stuff. I actually have dipped off a little bit. I don't post repost. Is that what they call it? Repost everybody else's stuff as much, just because it's arduous. I like to support the people who come on the show, like, all the past guests we've had, including Drew. And if they're posting anything, I'll repost it, right? Just to say, hey, follow this guy. He's doing cool stuff. The issue is when you've had as many people, and I've been blessed. I'm not going to lie. I've been blessed. When you've had as many people as I have on, literally everybody's posting stuff all day long. So my stories end up being 40, 50. They're not, but you know what I mean? Like, it gets really long. And it's just reposting other people's stuff. I try to, anyway, that's one way you can. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. So I will let you know I am recording this on Sunday morning. It's not early in the morning. Like last week, or the last part 1, I told you that I didn't have any coffee. Well, I will tell you this. I woke up this morning, same Sunday, and didn't have any coffee. So that is an issue. So I went to the coffee store and got me said coffee. So now I've already drank one, so we're gonna have our second. So this one is one called a Café con Miel, and so basically it's a latte, right? But it's a latte with honey, which I love honey, and it has cinnamon in it. So it's it gives it a different flavor. It's really nice. It's really refreshing. It's very strong. Triple shot, of course. So cheers. It like the cinnamon kind of like balances the bitterness of the coffee a little bit. It gives it like less astringency, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I'm critiquing my coffee in the morning. Anyway, moving on. Excuse me. It went down the wrong pipe. So I have tons of notes that I wrote out for chapters 11 through 20. I was originally going to do the rest of the book and just be done with the book, but there is so much information Not that there wasn't in the first 10 chapters, but there's so much information in here. I could literally deep dive each chapter. I'm not going to. I did pull out some key facts, and I did the same thing with the timeline and chapter by chapter. So that we're going to do that again. But I wanted to tell you something. The reason why I'm a little bit hoarse. So as you guys well know, I am a plumber by trade, a master plumber. Been doing this for 25 years, right? I know my way around a pipe wrench, right? So long story short, I'm going to try and keep it very short. I don't know if you guys remember back, September, October of last year, we had a little mold issue in our house. Our AC leaked. We had to rip up wood floors, all the things. Well, during that time, I was also very slow at work. I am self-employed, so if I ain't working, I ain't making money, that type of thing, you know. Working with another company, you're more likely to get hours, right? Whereas with me, if I ain't working, I ain't making money. So we are owner financed in our house, and so we had some issues with that. So I was basically paying back a debt this weekend. Let's just say that. And I hate to be indebted to people, so that was a big deal to me. So now, fast forward to today or yesterday, whatever. I am extremely busy, which is great, right? I'm extremely busy in work. I have a lot going on. Said person needed help, and the only time I could do it was yesterday on the weekend, which I have no problem doing. The issue is I'm still not 100% recovered from past issues. So it makes me extremely tired. By Friday night, I'm spent. I'm done. And then I have, those 2 days to kind of recover and get back to it. The issue is yesterday I had to go and work. Well, it wasn't just, fix this, do this. I was literally doing all the plumbing for a little cabin or what. You don't need to know the semantics of it unless you want to. Well, that's a whole nother podcast. It has nothing to do with this book, so we can talk about that on a later show. But I was doing the work. It was hot out. Obviously, we're in Central Texas, and it's June. It's hot. Working and sweating and doing all the things. Well, I was going to turn the water on. I had done all the plumbing that I could, and I was turning the water on. Well, the owner of the property had put the water line underground to that cabin, and it came up and had a cap on it. So I cut that cap off, tied my piping into it. Here's the story. Tied my piping into it, and then turned the water back on to double check all of my stuff. Well, like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I know the protocol to do what needs to be done. And I learned a long time ago that when somebody else does something, you always have to double check their work before you do your work. Amen. Not that I don't trust people. It's just that they don't do it your way, right? Well, what had happened, and it's nobody's, well, it is, but it's nobody's fault. It's actually my fault, and I take full blame for it. A bunch of dirt and rocks and stuff had got into the PVC water line that the owner installed, and then went into all my brand new piping and clogged up the shower valve, clogged up the water heater lines. And so it's 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's 100 degrees outside, and I have no water. And I'm very frustrated. I'm very angry. And I tried. I've been trying very hard to be calm, collected, cool, and lost it. I lost it a little bit. I'm not going to lie. Personally, not, I was angry with myself because I knew I should have blown that water line out before I even tied onto it. And I was in a hurry. Like when we get in a hurry, what do? We make mistakes, right? That was not a fatal mistake. I was able to get it unstopped. I had to cut out one of my fittings. And there was a huge, we were talking a huge rock inside the piping. It's 3/4 inch piping, and that rock fit perfectly inside there. Ergo, no flow of water, right? So that was very frustrating because I was ready to go home. I was hot, tired, I was exhausted, and I was done. So I cut out the fitting, put it all back together, and it worked. Shower worked. Everything was great. I still got to go back to do some stuff, but anyway. I digress. I think what had happened was I overexerted myself. And I've had kind of, we've been having rain and all kinds of stuff here. I've been having a little sinus stuff. I went to bed last night. Felt okay. Woke up this morning. It was not okay. Like, it was like, Anyway, that is more than likely. I overstressed my body a little bit. And today, just chilling, doing the podcast. I got a box of some stuff for samples for people. And that's pretty much all I'm doing. I'm not even grilling tonight. So just understand that. All right, let's get into the book. Transition. Here we come. I always pick that one. I want to pick this one now. Oh. Okay. So I just wanted to let you guys know that Drew doesn't just have this Tennessee whiskey book. He just, and the Patreon at home will be able to see the book. He just released this book. It's the Travel Guide to Experiencing Kentucky Bourbon, the 2nd edition. Now, full transparency, I did purchase this off of Amazon. And this basically gives you a guide by step-by-step of every distillery. Well, as far as can be said. Everything from Heaven's Door to Bullet, Bardstown. Let me find another one. Becker and Bird. You ever heard of them? Boone County. Casey Jones. Dude, if you're planning a trip to Kentucky, this is the book to have. It goes into the history and how to taste like a pro, creative ways of choosing a distillery tour. This is basically everything you need to know about a Kentucky experience. So I know it's a shameless plug for Drew, but you know what? He's a cool dude, and I'm going to do it. And I do want to go to Kentucky. I do. I think it would be a lot of fun. Obviously, I want to stay away from the mainland, if you get what I'm saying. Like, I do love what they call legacy brands, right? I do. Buffalo Trace is good. Jim Beam, Jack Daniels. Not Jack Daniels. You know what I mean? Jim Beam. One that I would go through to would be Wild Turkey. Just something about Wild Turkey that gets me. Anyway, so think about this book. It wasn't that expensive, and I think it's a cool guide to the spirit world. Lord, yeah. All right, let's get into it. Coffee. I can feel my throat already. Well, hopefully I can feel my throat, right? All right, let's get into it. Chapter 11. Okay, so where we last let off, we were in the early days of Tennessee, before it was even really Tennessee. Pre-Prohibition, 1860s, 1890s. So I'm going to go through these chapters up to chapter 20, and that will get us to the Prohibition tsunami. Get ready for that. Then I'm going to go back and deep dive one chapter. I thought how do I say it? That would give us, and then I do have questions and stuff like that again. I feel like that time allotted, right? I don't want these podcasts to be 5 hours long. I could literally, like I said, deep dive each one of these chapters. But yeah, there's so much information there. So much. So you just have to read or listen to the book, please. It's wow. But the way that Drew, and I know I said this on the last one, the way that he presents the information, he makes it in such a way to where it's like, okay, I get it. And he puts a story in there that doesn't feel like it fits. He'll be talking about a cotton gin. What does a cotton gin have to do with whiskey, right? But then he ties that person in with another person, and then next thing you know, there's a group of, anyway, it's really interesting. It's really intriguing the way he does it, and I'm sure he does it throughout his books. Now I'm just intrigued and want to dive deeper into everything. So, Chapter 11, The Rise of Coffee County. Coffee County emerged as a key player in Tennessee whiskey's growth. It explores the entrepreneurial spirit of the region and how distillers formed their networks. Their family names and small operations began establishing reputations that will echo into modern era. So that just kind of gets you back to where we were, right? Okay. So in chapter 12, this is called Temperance Looms. Hanish introduces the growing tensions with temperance movement. Yeah, we kind of dipped on that a little bit. Obviously, chapter 12 goes deep into it. Early warning signs appear as civic and religious groups begin lobbying against alcohol. And that's all alcohol. Whiskey producers start feeling political pressures and even as demands stay on high. So they're like, oh crap. Like they're fixing to do something and we feel it. Like okay, I'm going to say this and I'm not going to interject on every chapter, but I feel that like you can feel, and I'm going to use this term and don't hate me for it. You can feel like a glitch in the matrix. Does that make sense? Like you can feel something's off, right? So you can just kind of feel it. It's a gut feeling you have. And back then they were like, okay, we're blowing and going. We're making whiskey. But something's going on, right? Something is happening. Okay. Chapter 13, whiskey towns. The idea of whiskey towns, communities where distilling was an economic engine. Towns like Lynchburg and Tullahoma flourished due to distilling income. It focused on how distilleries were shaped by local culture, politics, and social structures. So these were, and probably still are, these towns, they were just communities, like these farm stills, like we were talking about. But then they realized like, this is a thing. This turns into a thing. And we need to like capitalize on said thing. Because you have to think about this. This is the early years of Tennessee whiskey. This is the years that nobody knew outside of these counties. Nobody knew about Tennessee whiskey. And then all of a sudden word gets out and these people are doing, the Robertson family's doing this and this, and, and the Shelby family and all these people are doing things and it gets heard. And people are like, oh, it's a thing. And in the book, it says multiple times that they were trying to produce quality whiskey. So this is at the same time where Kentucky is now making whiskey as well. And everybody was like, okay, it wasn't really a competition because they were fighting against each other, but they really weren't, because Tennessee and Kentucky, they're just different. It's just different whiskey, right? So that's really interesting. That's really interesting. And it was the whiskey community really kind of started. Okay. So then we get into chapter 14, which, as a nerd, this one hit me. This was a more technical chapter driven into the traditional Tennessee whiskey production. So if you want to learn about production of Tennessee whiskey, this is the chapter. Charcoal mellowing and its controversial historic origins were discussed. So he goes in depth about charcoal mellowing and all of those things. This focuses on how the distillery shaped the wrong one. This also explored the unique equipment and techniques used by the 19th century distilleries. So you have to think about it. Most of the time back then they were using pot stills. And like we said in the early years, they were doing single pass distillation. So the distillation was, it was good. Don't get me wrong. It was a good distillation, but the product was not refined as much. So it could be a little harsher. It's going to have more methanol in it than ethanol. It's going to be the proof is going to be all over the place, because you think, even though, let's say you have, let's say you have a 10% wash, then this is not linear. Okay. Just understand that. Let's say you have a 10% wash going into a still, and you have 1,000 gallons, right? 1,000 gallons of 10% wash. You're not going to get 10% whiskey off of 1,000. You're not, because it's like a bell curve. It goes up and down. And that apex, or I'm guessing that's what it's called. I'm not a dude that knows the things. That center point of the curve is where you want to pull off from. Obviously, you want the best part, but that is also the part that is most volatile. Now, at the first, it's really volatile because it's a lot of methanol, but the amount of whiskey that they take off was really dependent upon taste and smell. But when you're going back then, you were going to get a lot more of the grain and yeast characteristics because you are doing a single pass distillation. So the amount that you take of heads and tails is really, really important because you're not pre-distilling it. It is what it is at this point. So if it sucks, it sucks. And now charcoal mellowing, that we well know, does soften the edges. So think about it dulls the knife. Okay. It's like when you're cutting tomatoes, right? And your knife's just slicing through the tomatoes, and then all of a sudden you hit the cutting board wrong and it don't cut right. And the edge it's dulled. I don't want to say dull because it doesn't dull the flavor. It how do I say this? It mellows it. I mean, that's the best way to put it. It mellows the whiskey. And they did that before barreling. And sometimes they didn't even barrel. We learned about that already. Sorry. So that was a really interesting chapter to me, obviously, because the nerdy part of distillation comes in. Then in chapter 15, we learned about some family dynasties that were going on. This introduced prominent distilling families and their multi-generational impact. It focused on legacy and how the skills were passed down. It also began to hint at rivalries and consolidations to come. Okay, so speaking of that, and this is a caveat inside while I have a sip of coffee. I just heard last night, I was watching a live stream, Baker Drinks, if you guys ever hung out with them. Baker Drinks was talking about, oh my gosh, I lost him. Who was it? Somebody, Barry. Old Elk. I don't know if you've heard of Old Elk bourbon, right? They got purchased, the entire brand got purchased by Middle West. Now, Middle West Distilling, they're really doing some cool stuff, but they purchased Old Elk, which Old Elk was a non-distilling producer. So they were taking MGP or Barton and either aging it a little longer, doing like cigar blends with it, doing cask finishing, stuff like that, which a lot of NDPs do, right? That's kind of how they make themselves different. But I will say that I have had a couple Old Elks, not very many. They were extremely expensive. Like for a bottle of, 6-year-old MGP bourbon that's been finished in Armagnac, so let's say whatever, $90, $100. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. So I'm hoping that this acquisition from Middle West, which is, I thought it was not a very big brand. Now that they own Old Elk, like, are they going? Because as far as I know, Middle West was producing everything that they had. Put a pin in that. I might do that on the next episode. I might dive a little deeper into that because that's interesting to me. That a not very big brand would buy a not very big brand. Now, Old Elk has quite a bit of following, but it's like a premier brand, I guess you could say. I don't know. It just, to me, it's I'm not going to say it's not jiving, but to me, there's like something there. There's a reason behind it. But yeah, it kind of like talking about consolidation. That's kind of where that hit me. All right. And in chapter 16, guess who comes back in? Yeah. Big brother. The government knocks. Yeah. This discusses the beginning of federal regulations and taxation. Many small distilleries struggled with compliance and the paperwork. The tension between federal interest and local whiskey makers heated up. You know I'm going to talk about this one. You know I'm going to. Okay, so chapter 16. I'm not going to say a lot of words, okay? So understand what I am saying. I don't want for people, when they're drinking whiskey, I don't want for them to be sick or hurt by said whiskey, like bathtub whiskey, right? That's what I want. That's where the Bottle and Bond Act, that's where all of that stuff came in, was to help people not die from drinking whiskey. There's a difference between that and taxation, okay? Taxation in this form was there so that, I'm going to say it, so that the government could take more money away from the whiskey distilleries. These mom and pop guys that were farm distilleries, and they weren't even really, I mean, they were selling their wares, but they were not like shipping them out. They were literally people that came in, and they had to have all these tax stamps. They had to have all this red tape paperwork filed with the government and all of these things. Yes, I understand. In the United States especially, we have to follow certain guidelines, and we have to do certain things. That's just life, right? That is just how life works right now. You don't follow the rules, you go to jail. I get it. But why do you... choosing my words wisely, okay? Why does the tax have to change and get higher and higher and more? And now you're taxed on this. You're taxed on proof gallons. You're taxed on barrel. You're taxed on barrel warehousing. You're taxed on bottle sales. You're taxed on bottles. You get where I'm going? You're taxed on having a business. You're taxed on how much revenue you make. You're taxed on how much taxes you paid. You're taxed on your groceries. No, wait, hold on. No, I mean, you are. But anyway, you get where I'm going? So yeah, there's that. It's the same with any other thing that's going on in the world, right? It's the same. I understand that the government runs off of the money that we give to them. Does that make sense? They say that your taxes are going to pave the roads that you have and build the schools that are in your area. Show me the proof of that. Anyway, let's move on. There's a lot of tensions between federal interest and local whiskey makers. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, chapter 17. This one's interesting, and this is the one we're going to deep dive. I obviously didn't want to deep dive the government one. This is called Hidden History. This is where Hannah shines a light on overlooked figures in Tennessee whiskey: women, African Americans, and immigrants. The emphasis on their contribution and how history has often left them out. So I am going to do that right now as soon as I can find it. I have a lot of papers, guys. I wrote quite a bit about this. So there's my questions. Okay. Right here. Oh, don't lose it. Don't lose your place. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Very sorry. All right. All right. So here's some people of chapter 17 that are very notable and people that you need to know about. And some of them you do. Well, it's actually two. So 2 or 3. Anyway, it doesn't matter. All right, let's go. Nathan Nearest Green, who was an enslaved man who taught Jack Daniel how to distill. His date range, he was likely born around 1820 to 1825. He began distilling in 1850 to 1860. He was located in Lincoln County. He was working for Dan Call, a preacher and distiller. Green became Jack Daniel's first head distiller. Jack always acknowledged Green's role as a rare and significant gesture for that era. However, Nearest was largely forgotten by the mainstream whiskey world until recent years. The Uncle Nearest premium whiskey brand was founded by Fawn Weaver in 2017, honoring him directly. The distillery is now the fastest growing African American spirit brand in the U.S. In 2019, the Texas General Assembly officially recognized Nathan Green's legacy. 2019, dude. Like, this dude was distilling in 1850, and he didn't get recognition until 2019. Yeah. Okay, so this next heading is just enslaved laborers in distilleries. And just let me get through it, okay? Enslaved laborers didn't just help distill. They often ran the day-to-day operations. They handled yeast propagation, mash cooking, fermentation management, still operation. Their craftsmanship laid the foundation for much of the flavor and consistency that defined early Tennessee whiskey. Why were their stories lost? Here's the reason. After the Civil War, distilleries either ignored or whitewashed their origins. Enslaved individuals couldn't patent techniques or own a distillery. Post-Reconstructive history often centered on white founders and ignored enslaved collaborators. Distilling families who passed down their stories often did so orally, not in ledgers or in official history, which Drew's talked about that multiple times. He's like, this is lore. And he had to go by what was written down, unfortunately. So there's a lot of lost history inside the lost history. Does that make sense? So here's some important dates that you might want to know about. Nathan Green's birth, they don't know exactly, 1820 to 1825. Nearest teaches Jack Daniels to distill, 1856 to 1865. The Civil War ends in 1865. Jack Daniels opens his own distillery in 1866 to 1875, officially registered in 1866, operationally later. Uncle Nearest's brand was launched in 2017, and Tennessee recognized Green's contribution in 2019. So, why do you think it took until the 21st century for Nearest Green to be recognized publicly? What do you think? Why do you think that was? I will give you my thoughts, and that's all I have, right? I just have my thoughts, and this is coming from a man who doesn't know his own history, let alone the world's history, right? I think what it is we tend to forget history. We tend to forget the past. Now, I will tell you, as a human, I know that looking back in my own life is not the way to be, right? You don't want to look back. You always want to be looking forward and being in the present, right? That's why it's called the present, because it's a gift, right? We only have today, blah, blah, blah. We'll talk about that later. So, but I think there is something to understanding our heritage and understanding the things that we did back then. And that's what Drew is very finely putting onto paper, is this history is, it's sad. Some of it's sad. Some of it's angerful. You know what I mean? Some of it's very bad. Some of it's also very good. And not just in whiskey, in period, in life, right? Like these, I'm not going to say that. Okay. These things happened to get us to the point where we are now. And the fact that it took up until the 21st century for us to acknowledge Nearest Green just shows that how far behind we still are. Does that make sense? It just goes to show how much we still don't have compassion for each other and don't have love and don't have this neighborly approach to the world. It's all about greed, and it's all about the money, and it's all about the other things, right? It's not so much about having compassion and care for your brother and sister. And it wasn't until then when he got recognized. Well, guess what? He's long gone. His family, they're still around, obviously, but like the legacy that was left behind, not only with him, but with the other enslaved workers, it shaped Tennessee whiskey and whiskey in general. It wasn't just Tennessee, whiskey in general. It shaped it. You know what I mean? So we have to pay homage to that as whiskey enthusiasts. Now, I've never had Uncle Nearest, the whiskey, the new whiskey that came out. I'd love to try some. Anyway, let's move on to the next question. How would the whiskey industry look today if Green had been allowed to be a distillery owner? I think it would look very different if we did not have the subjugation that we had back then. I feel like in the whiskey world, we do have a lot of heritage, right? They call them heritage brands, right? But most of those heritage brands have been bought up by other brands. So where's the heritage, right? Yes, it's still Jimmy Russell over there doing his thing for 70 years or whatever. But is it a heritage brand? I feel like if Green was around and he was able to own his own distillery, it would have, where would Jack Daniels be? Right? Exactly. So I don't know. I don't know. I think the whiskey industry would look different because Jack Daniels would struggle because he would have direct competition with somebody who taught him. Everybody makes whiskey differently. That's why it's so cool to deep dive on all these craft brands, right? Anyway, super cool. What does it say about America's history that enslaved people's knowledge for creating products, but still celebrated today while their names were forgotten? Yeah. What does it say about American history that enslaves people's knowledge, created products that still celebrated today while their names were forgotten? So basically, we want the brand. We don't care about the name. We don't care about how it was made. We just want to know, was it made and is it good? Every distillery has a story. Every distillery, every person has a testimony, right? Be it little, be it big, it doesn't matter. You don't have to face life or death to have a testimony. You just have to face life. Life in itself should create a testimony for you. You know what I mean? My young children right now have a huge testimony, right? And they're young. Their life is not even started yet, right? And then the old man has a huge testimony, right? We all do. And that's what makes it so cool for me personally, doing this podcast, is I get to hear their story, your story. And it doesn't matter. The whiskey is secondary to the story. Secondary to the story. Because everybody's story, although similar in this realm, it's very different. Very different. Okay, here's a hard one. Ready? Do modern brands have a responsibility to correct the history records? What do you think? Do modern brands have a responsibility to correct historical records? I'm going to say yes. In the fact that if you are propagating lies on top of whiskey lore, now, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. I do understand that, right? But I also think if you are going to lie about your history, then that's what it is. It's a lie about history. So ignorance doesn't make you complicit, right? So being ignorant about your history doesn't make it okay. Now, do I think everybody needs to do a Drew Hannish deep dive on every distillery? I don't know, man. Like, I feel I have good feelers, right? I feel that like when I'm talking to people on said podcast, I can feel them out pretty easy if they're genuine or not. And look, I've been very blessed by not only the people that I've had on, but like being able to do that. So it's easier for me to be like, that's bullshit. You know what I mean? That's not right. Or, yep, that's exactly what I thought or what I've heard. And that's the thing. Hearsay isn't history. Hearsay is what this person told this person, which is lore. So yeah, I don't know. Okay, so here's a couple more questions, and then we'll get back to the next chapters. Before reading this chapter, have you ever heard of Nearest Green before? Other than the Uncle Nearest, right? The whiskey that came out. I mean, I'm sure like his name came up, but like before 2017, had you heard of him? If you were into whiskey before then, do you feel differently about legacy brands after learning how much the enslaved people contributed? What do you think about that? What about George Washington's brand, right? Mount Vernon, right? Enslaved people. Yeah, for sure. How can consumers encourage brands to honor historical truth? How do we do that? How do we encourage people? I'll tell you how we encourage people to honor historical truth is to know historical truth. And to call them on their BS and say, that is not correct. You need to do more research on that. Now, there's a fine line there. There's a very fine line there between shepherding people through their mistakes or through their unknowingness, right? If you work at, say, a distillery, it doesn't matter, some distillery, and you're telling your backstory, and that is the backstory that had been told to you. They put it on a script or whatever, right? You don't do the research. You're just an employee, right? You're like, I just do the whiskey thing out here. Like, I don't know. But it is also us as a whiskey connoisseur. It is our job to hold these people accountable, because if you're going to say a thing, do the thing, right? But we have to do that in such a way to where we're not condescending and that we're not like pointing the finger that, hey, you're doing something wrong. They are, but they need to be shepherded through that. We have to do that with grace, right? We have to do that with grace, because if I'm doing something wrong, if somebody calls me out for it, how does it make me feel? It automatically puts my defenses up, and I don't want to talk to that person. And my claws come out and I want to attack. So we have to come at it in a way to where we're like, hey, I was doing research on your brand and I noticed A, B, C, D. Have you ever thought, and don't do it in the middle of a tour, right? Pull them aside and say, hey, I not to be a nerd, but I have some notes here that are a little more historically accurate than what you're saying right now. And I really want for you to be as accurate as possible. And they don't have to listen to you, right? They don't have to, but that would be the way to do it. Is we have to inform the people who are trying to inform the masses, because us being the nerds, and if you're listening to this, you're a freaking nerd. Okay. Just understand that right now. Us being the nerds, we have to inform the people of our knowledge. If it is more correct than what they're saying. Now, we have to have backing proof of it. And that's where the issue we're at in the world right now. Anyway, I'm not getting into that. Okay. Okay. What other hidden histories in whiskey or in the industry do you think still needs uncovering? There's so many. To me, there's so many. There's so many history things that we just need to deep dive. We need to get into a lot of things. And it's, man. There's so much out there. And opening this history nut, if you want to say, opening this history nut is man, it is really. Sorry, I'm trying to get through my paperwork. I have a lot to get through still. All right, where were we? All right, chapter 18. Yeah, we're almost there. I will tell you the only bad thing with this coffee is once you get about halfway through, you got to kind of stir it up because all the cinnamon and cassia, whatever it is, settles to the bottom. And then that last drink you get, you're like taking the cinnamon challenge. Chapter 18, corn and culture. Corn's central role in Tennessee whiskey is explored. The ties between local agriculture and distilling and how regional corn varietals influenced taste. It also touched on the culture surrounding moonshining and illicit distilling. Okay. I'm going to touch on this for just a second. So corn in itself is a basis to make ethanol. That's it. And that's what they used it for because it was a neutral, almost a neutral grain. It did not have a taste. Sometimes it'll taste like sweet corn or cornbread or, it does have that cream corn type note, but that's it. And when you put it in a barrel or you mix it with rye and, malt, it really kind of takes the background, but using mass amounts of it, it creates ethanol, and ethanol is very pure and clean. And so what they said, it was abundant. Obviously, there was quite a bit of it. So what they were doing was making varietals, different types, hybridizing even back then. They were doing breeding programs and making their own corn varietals just for said distillery, which I think is super cool. And then, as you well know, the indigenous people of the area, they used all different types of corn: blue corn, red corn, green, Oaxacan green corn. Yeah, I've heard that. They are very flavorful. So they would use small amounts of these to just give it a different flavor, and it's really cool. The corn production back then they were using it for flavoring and for ethanol, which is super cool. Now it's a commodity grain, we get tons and tons and tons and tons of it, just for ethanol. Literally, that's it. But you have to think about it. Like when you have a whiskey that's at least 51% corn, right? But 70% corn or more, that's a lot of corn you're going through, right? That's a lot of corn. So just understand that. Chapter 19, the calm before the storm. This is a relatively stable period where whiskey industry thrived. Expanding markets and reputations built the slow technology advancements, but tensions are building with prohibitionists gaining more ground. That's the thing. Every time, man, I'm sorry. Every time industry starts ticking up, something is always looming. It seems like in history, and it's kind of strange. It's like every time we're having a thing, it gets attacked. But yeah, it was that stable period right before Prohibition where everybody was blowing and going and they were making whiskey and it was excellent whiskey and everybody wanted it. And, they were like, oh, dude, this guy's doing really cool stuff. This guy's doing cool things as well. All right. Chapter 20. Yeah, that's the last one for this episode. Tennessee begins its own prohibitions effort ahead of the national prohibition. Yeah, they were first. Many distilleries shuttered and were forced to go underground. The emotional and economic toll on families and towns. And this is where we're going to stop it, right? Yeah, I know. You're like, what? Yeah. No, we're stopping it at Prohibition because it is that gets us into the last third of the book that's going to be the resurgence of Tennessee whiskey. Like we spent almost 20 chapters in like 30, 40 years. Now we're going to do the last 10 chapters in almost 100 years. Let's get into that next time, obviously. So the temperance movement came in and was like, bro, we gotta, like, okay, I understand. I don't understand, but I understand. They're like, they're feeding their kids whiskey. They're having drinks before they go to work, working on machinery and stuff like that. They're impaired. And a lot of people are becoming addicted, or they're becoming alcoholics. And the churches and the temperance people are like, no, we have to stop this. Like it is ruining our society as a people. We have to stop this. And I am against temperance. I'm against prohibition. I'm against you telling me what to do. Obviously, right? Look at me. But I am also very much an advocate of you have to know yourself, right? You have to know, hey, maybe I'm not in the best mood. Maybe I shouldn't be drinking today. Or, hey, my body feels weird. Maybe I shouldn't be drinking today. Or, hey, I have had a drink every morning before I went to work. But back then, and I'll say this, their potable water system wasn't the greatest. I'll tell you that. Coming from a plumber, right? Their potable water system wasn't the greatest. They were pulling out of the rivers. There was a lot of giardia and a lot of, oh man, what is the other one? I lost it. It's fine. A lot of bacteria in the water. And so really, drinking beer, drinking wine, drinking whiskey, gin, whatever, it doesn't matter, was actually safer. I hate to say the word that, safer than drinking the water in some cases. There was some of the bigger cities that their water was, they were already on to treatment and stuff like that. I am not against, I don't know why I'm talking about this, but I am not against treating water for bacterial growth. Obviously, I don't want people to get sick, but sometimes in some municipalities, they treat it way too much. There, you can taste the whatever they're putting in there, chlorine or whatever, which that's not good for you, right? Obviously, you don't want to drink bleach. My strange addiction, you know what I mean? Like, come on, guys. So I get where they're coming from. I get where the temperance people are coming from. They're like, we are ruining our children's lives because we are making, oh man, I'm going here, I guess. When children are young, their brains are developing and their brains are ever changing. If you've been around a kid for any period of time, you know they're constantly changing and evolving. And when you introduce a poison, which is ethanol, into their system, it stunts that brain growth. I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice, but I do know those facts. That's why it says, do not feed this to a pregnant lady, right? Do not ingest this to a pregnant lady because it could cause fetal issues. So what do you think it does to a young mind? What do you think it does to an old mind, right? Exactly. So I'm not for temperance. I'm not for people telling me what to do and telling me how to drink or what to drink or who to drink with or whatever. I'm not for that. But I understand the basis behind it, if that makes sense, right? They were trying to save humanity. They thought. They went about it way the wrong way. And it created a prohibition, which in turn, that prohibition created the world that we live in now. Because we were like, F you, I won't do what you tell me. I'm going to go, it's Rage Against the Machine. They, talk about shills, right? Anyway, they were all government plans. Anyway, they're like, okay, if you don't want me to drink liquor, then I'll just go make moonshine, make my own. It's fine. We'll go in the backwoods and do it. It's fine. And so it went from whiskey was everywhere to whiskey was nowhere, but it was also everywhere again. And so then the tax man would come, the revenue guy would come. He'd see that you had an old still in the woods back there, and he'd break it and throw you in jail for making illicit whiskey. What did that do? That just pissed people off more to where they're like, screw you again. I'm going to go do it again. And then their kids went and did it. And it created a rift between, which there's always been, right? Anytime you have government influence with people, there will be a rift because their interests are not your interests. And that's just life, unfortunately. It's the same with the monarchy. It's the same with, we can get biblical on if you want to do that. It's God's word versus your word, right? At the end of the day, I'm not saying that the government is God. No, nowhere. They're more like the other. Anyway, I digress. So the prohibition, when it came in, it shut down everybody. There was a very few distilleries that were able to produce medical whiskey, doctor prescribed Jack Daniels or whatever, right? You would get 1/5 a week or month, I don't even know, of liquor. So everybody took a hit, besides the big guys, obviously. There was a couple big guys that stayed, but everybody took a hit. And we'll get into this next time, but once Prohibition was ratified, you would have thought it would have been gaga, right? Like everybody's going crazy on their whiskey. It wasn't like that. Everybody was just like, yes, thank you. I can have a drink with my friends in public. Now I don't have to do it at my house in the middle of the night. Does that make sense? Like they were still doing the thing. They just said that they could do it publicly now. And so it actually, not that I want legalization of all things. That's not what I'm saying. When you have restrictions on something, it makes people want to do it more. Does that make sense? So like, let's say when they had the prohibition, they said, you can't drink. Everybody wanted to drink. That's why there was speakeasies and all of these things. Everybody was looking for a drink because why? You told me not to do it. But as soon as it was ratified, right, and liquor was on the shelves again, okay, cool. But it's the same thing with like, they tried to ban cigarettes. They did the same thing with that. This whole thing with marijuana right now. Now there is a line, I feel. Do I feel like as a human, you get to make your own choice? Absolutely. You can do whatever you want. Should you? There's a difference. But it's not up to me to judge you for what you do, right? You do you. It's fine. Do I think they should make all drugs legal? No. But here's the thing. How do I say this? And I'm not going to talk on this topic for a long time. If they made all substances legal, we're talking meth, heroin, whatever. If they were all legalized, then they could be controlled by the said government, like they did with fentanyl. Oh, I'm sorry. They do. I actually was given fentanyl in the hospital. I'm not lying. That's 100% true. When they put my port in, they gave me fentanyl. It was lab grade fentanyl. I'm like, okay, well, it wasn't smuggled from Colombia. Who gives a crap? It's still fentanyl, right? So if they were to legalize it, there would be a lot of very drugged out people. Would there be regulation on it? Obviously, yes. But at the same time, like, I feel there's some people that do it just because it's illegal. And other people do it because they are literally addicted. And that's where that fine line goes. I don't want everything to be legal, because if it was, then, I mean, we're already there, but like it would be pandemonium, right? And I don't want my children, that I'm going to say from a father's perspective, I don't want my children to have access that easily to a substance that could kill them the first time they use it. Now, would it be different if it was created in a laboratory? I don't know. I mean, I saw Breaking Bad, right? But that doesn't mean it's better. Like drugs, and alcohol is a drug, right? Drugs in themselves are inherently bad. They're not good. They're not good for you. They're mind altering. Now, would I rather dumb you down a little bit right here? What is the difference between that and opiates over the counter and prescription type pills that you can get from a doctor? What is the difference, right? You go get opium or you go get Xanax. What is the difference, right? I have a prescription for this. Doctor says I can have this because I have depression or anxiety or something. So I can just tweak out for a couple hours. I don't know. How do y'all feel about that? I'm sorry. We're going to man. All right, let's get into a couple of questions. All right. This is the threat of temperance. The long shadow of temperance movement. It was not just a moral crusade. It was political. It was on how the government regulated taxation to create operation challenges. Tennessee went dry before the nation. Why was this state such a battleground? We're going to get into that. Let me find another one. The deep link between local farmers and whiskey production, regional corn varietals, and how they shape Tennessee's unique flavor. And does terroir apply when with whiskey as much as in some of the others? That's it. This, yeah, that is right. I'm sorry, guys. I'm looking through my notes, making sure I don't want to miss something on these chapters. So at chapter 20, we're hitting prohibition, and it's hitting hard. So there is also so much going on behind the scenes in these whiskey distilleries. They are trying their hardest, right, before prohibition hits, to stay afloat and they're making good product and they're doing all these things. But then they get hit with prohibition. And so what does that do? That literally kneecaps them. Pop, they're done. Or they're struggling. So, I mean, how can a whiskey distillery not make whiskey and survive for 13 years? No. Let's say this. If I was a craft distiller and I had, say a 200-gallon pot, I was making a barrel of whiskey a week, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? I'm dead. I'm done. Like, now the bigger brands, Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, all of those guys, they're fine, right? And I'm going to say this, and take it for what you will. And Drew, if you're listening, and if you don't feel this way, this is my opinion. I feel that there was certain people in the whiskey community before prohibition that paid their dues, to where they didn't have to close and to where they could still create whiskey. Because what they were doing was they were creating whiskey and they were sitting on it. So I'm going to say this, and it's, again, my opinion. I don't think they paid the revenue tax on those said whiskeys either. So once prohibition was over, they had very well-aged stock ready to go out for the masses. Whereas every other distillery that closed down or shut their doors for that time period had to start anew. So it's almost like the dark ages of whiskey. Dark meaning you don't know nothing about it. And you're not going to know nothing about it because they don't want you to know nothing about it. In the end, does it matter? No. And yes. No, because we can't change it. It's history. It's already done. But yes, because some distilleries that were making absolutely fantastic Tennessee whiskeys are gone forever. They're erased out of the history books other than the lost history book. Understand? So all of these great distilleries that have been thriving for years, not 20s of years, but years, are gone forever. Their namesake, Everything that they stood for is gone. And that hurts. And I have been hearing, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, word of another temperance type movement making its way. I see it. I see whiskey changing. Obviously, I've done multiple episodes on it. Whiskey's changing. Whiskey is, now good whiskey is still there. There's tons of good whiskey, and it's not going anywhere right now. But whiskey's changing, and there's a reason it's changing. I don't know the reason yet. I'm working on it, trying to get down to brass tacks of it. But I don't know. In the comments, let me know what you think. Are we headed to another temperance movement? And if so, what does that look like? I don't know. Food for thought, right? This is a very sobering episode in more ways than one. I don't know. It makes me think a lot of things about not only Tennessee whiskey, but whiskey in general, right? How it's what, which I've always said. I've always said this. Whiskey is so much more than what's in the glass, right? Whiskey is so much more than what's in the glass. It's the history, it's the science, it's the nerdery. But it's also, if you don't have something else, then what now, right? What now? So anyway. All right. So next time we are going to finish the book. Yeah, we're going to finish it. We're going to get through chapter 30, 21 to 30. I hope you guys enjoy this. I really do. Like, I put a little bit of time, into it, trying to get guidelines at least. Hopefully you're reading along. We're going to finish up the book. After this episode, I will have a distillery on. So there will be a gap in between part 2 and part 3, only because I need a break. I've been doing a lot of reading and research for this. I have all the notes for the rest because I was actually going to deep dive the entire thing. But I'm already at an hour and I don't want to do another 10 chapters. That's going to blow my mind. So if you guys like this, please, let me know. Let me know down in the comments, please. That you can comment now on Apple as well, and Spotify. You can comment on there. I will not have this now. It will go on YouTube. On YouTube, I clicked the thing that said to put the podcast on YouTube as well. So the audio of this one, because if you're not on Patreon, you don't get the video of this. The audio of this will go on YouTube, but it's just an audio file, right? So, because I won't put this one out on YouTube. So if you listen to the one on YouTube, please comment on that one as well. I had Jeff Castle. He commented on the last one and said some very kind words, and I appreciate that. But yeah, no, this has been intriguing. I've learned so much, and we're not even done, right? I've learned so much about Tennessee whiskey. Oh, before I go, let's talk about Drew calling me out. So if you listen to the episode with Drew Hannish, where we talked about all things whiskey lore, right? He called me out. Yeah, he did. And it's okay. It's okay, because by the end of this, you will understand I have changed my mind. So I'm going to give you a little synopsis and then I'm going to go. So in the podcast, Drew said that while I had contacted him about doing the podcast, he was like, yes, he did research on me. He did a little background on me, which is fine. I'm an open book. I say the things on here. I'll say it to your face too. Yeah, I have nothing to hide. I did a YouTube video called Whiskey Myths, and he's all about whiskey myths, right? So one of the whiskey myths that I said was that Tennessee whiskey is just bourbon that's been charcoal filtered, and that there's nothing special. It's just that. And they want to have some special name, blah, blah, blah. I did say that. But I digress from that. After reading this book, after talking with Drew, after understanding Tennessee whiskey, again, I've said it 100 times. I'm going to say it again. The whiskey is much more than what's in the glass. It is the history. It is the love. It is the mystique. It is the story behind it. It is the whiskey lore that makes Tennessee whiskey its own thing. It's not bourbon. Although technically it is still bourbon, it is not bourbon. It is its own thing because it has its own heritage. And when a brand or when a type has its own heritage, that makes it a thing. And I will be the first to say that I was wrong. I mean, Drew was actually the first to say, but I will be the first to say that I was wrong and that I was mistaken. And I apologize to all the Texas whiskey makers out there. I've had a couple of them on the podcast, right? Excellent people. I don't want to subjugate people because of my own bias. Just because I don't like the flavor profile of Jack Daniel's Old Number 7, right? Doesn't mean that I hate all Tennessee whiskey. And I need to change my bias. And that's it. And Drew and this book and some of the people out there have really changed my mind about it. And I apologize to all the Texas whiskey fans out there. I was wrong. And I can admit that I was wrong. I think it shows genuine understanding. So I thank you. I thank you for letting me be wrong and letting me walk through this. And I thank you, Drew, for calling me out, calling me on my BS, because you know what? I say things sometimes without really thinking about them. And I know you guys have seen that. That's ADHD at its finest, right? You say things and then think about what you said afterwards. So I say all that to say this. I have a newfound love for Tennessee whiskey. Not so much, not only the liquid, but the lore, the mystique, the history, and the brand in itself, Tennessee whiskey itself, right? And I need to get into more Tennessee whiskey and try all of these different types. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope that this episode was enlightening. There will be a part 3, obviously. So stay tuned for that. It's coming in 2 weeks, I think. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're going to move on to bigger and better things. Yeah. And the guest who's coming on next week, well, you know what? I'm going to tell you. Why not? It's Law's Whiskey House. Yeah, Law's Whiskey House is coming on next week, and they're talking about all the cool crap that they're doing. It is absolutely fantastic. I don't know. Everybody I get on lately is wanting to do 2-3 hours of conversation. So I'm down for it. I'm down for it. Even though it's late at night and I'm like, I'm tired. Anyway, no, it was a lot of fun. I'm glad that Al came on and talked to us, and we'll talk about that later. But y'all enjoy. Hope y'all have a great weekend and a great summer. It's getting hot out there, so make sure you drink water, and y'all be good. And hey, you know what? Pick you up a Tennessee whiskey. And on the next one, we'll sip a Tennessee whiskey. How about that? I'm going to pick me up one. Yeah, let's do that. Any Tennessee whiskey, right? If you can find a Tennessee whiskey, it has to be the charcoal mellowed one. If you can find a Tennessee whiskey, pick you up one. And then in the next podcast, we will do a drink along. Not a drink along, but you know what I mean. We'll sip some Tennessee whiskey together. How about that? I'm not going to do it live. I decided not to do that. There's too much stuff going on right now. So y'all be good. And until next time, drink water. Keep your spirits up. Peace out.